Larry Hagman broke down in tears on set once a month while filming I Dream of Jeannie. Behind the charming astronaut smile, he was drinking 5 bottles of champagne a day, experimenting with LSD between takes and spiraling into a darkness that terrified his co-stars. Barbara Eden covered for him for 5 straight years, protecting him from network executives who wanted him gone. But protecting him meant living through behavior she still won't fully describe. And when they reunited decades later on Dallas, something strange happened that made everyone realize the connection between them had never really ended. When NBC started casting for I Dream of Jeannie in 1964, they wanted a clean-cut astronaut who could look calm next to a magical genie. Larry Hagman didn't fit that mold. He was 33, full of restless energy, and couldn't stop cracking jokes between lines. When he walked into his first meeting, he started improvising and twisting the dialogue like it was a stage rehearsal. Sidney Sheldon watched, amused, but cautious. Television couldn't survive that kind of chaos every week. NBC rejected him more than once, but Sheldon slowly began to see something different. That loose, unpredictable energy might actually keep the show alive. He took the risk and Larry Hagman got the job. Barbara Eden felt it right away. The moment they rehearsed together, she saw something that no other actor had. The nervous astronaut and the wide-eyed genie worked like puzzle pieces. So when NBC started doubting Hagman after a few tense weeks, she stood firm. She told them changing the lead would ruin the show's magic. Some say she even stormed into Sheldon's office and declared there was no genie without Larry. Maybe that's a bit of legend, but it's true that her loyalty kept him from being replaced. She protected him when the network started to worry about his temper and mood swings. And that loyalty became the thread that held the show together. During the first table read in 1965, Hagman acted like he was back in theater. He moved around, threw in unscripted jokes, and kept breaking up the room with wild, anxious humor. Barbara Eden and Bill Daly couldn't stop laughing. But the producers were less amused. They worried that audiences would see Tony Nelson as unstable instead of funny. Sheldon finally pulled him aside and told him to stick closer to the script. There was no time for long ad-libs in weekly television. Larry nodded, but that nervous edge stayed in every scene he played. It became part of Tony Nelson's charm. Off-camera, the bond between Hagman and Eden only grew stronger, but his personal life started to spiral. Behind the charm and quick wit, he was drinking heavily and smoking to stay calm. During the Jeannie years, he said he could go through multiple bottles of champagne a day. Sometimes it was to keep his nerves steady, sometimes just to dull the noise. His moods became unpredictable, swinging from laughter to anger without warning. Yet Eden kept standing by him. Producers thought about letting him go more than once, but she always found a way to calm the storm. Their chemistry saved the show, but it also allowed his addiction to grow in the shadows. On set, small habits started to bother people. During season 1, Hagman often fixed Barbara's costume himself, straightening her belt or veil before the cameras rolled, then leaving his hand there a little too long. Crew members joked about the Hagman hover, but some found it uncomfortable. He wasn't trying to be cruel, but his need for control and insecurity about being overshadowed by his co-star came out in strange ways. Soon after, stories spread that he borrowed walkie-talkies to track where she was during lunch, walking into her dressing area uninvited for Jeannie check-ins. There's no hard proof of that, but everyone agreed he could be possessive. The same anxious energy that made him funny also made him restless when he wasn't in control. Even makeup sessions became strange. Some said he would stand behind Barbara's chair, take the brush from her stylist, and gently run it through her hair, whispering that she was his genie anchor. Nobody stopped him. Maybe because they didn't want to trigger his temper. People tiptoed around him. Eden later called him brilliant but troubled, and she meant it. His moods ruled the set, but his acting kept the cameras rolling. He depended on her more than anyone realized. Some stories claim he would wait outside her dressing room after filming, pacing the hallway until she came out. Bill Daly supposedly called it puppy dog possessiveness. It sounds exaggerated, but it fits the pattern. He admired her, leaned on her, and feared losing her support. When NBC again considered firing him for his drinking, Eden stepped in one last time to protect him. Their friendship lasted for years, but it was built on fragile ground. By season 2 in 1966, Hagman was drinking every day. He was 34 and already deep in addiction. Barbara said he often arrived irritable, T turned on the charm the moment the director called action. He carried a silver thermos around, pretending it held coffee, but everyone knew it was filled with alcohol. The smell gave him away. Crew members joked quietly, but they also worried. He could empty several bottles of champagne before lunch, then keep sipping through the day. Years later, he admitted that he mixed vodka and champagne so often it nearly killed him. That same mix eventually destroyed his liver, forcing a transplant in 1995. When his behavior got worse, producers sent him to therapy. Incredibly, the therapist told him to try LSD or marijuana to relax. Hagman later said he took LSD 4 or 5 times and even tried peyote once. Sometimes he arrived on set still high, laughing or forgetting his lines. And the crew would shoot extra takes to work around him. Barbara did what she always did. She stayed calm and held the scene together, covering for him whenever he slipped. Some fans claim she improvised almost half her lines during those moments, but no one really knows. What's certain is that her steady presence kept the show from falling apart. Through it all, Bill Daly remained loyal. He described his friendship with Hagman as joyful and full of laughter. People like to repeat a dramatic story that Bill once warned him, "Larry, the bottle's killing Tony." But that line never appeared in any official interview. The truth is simpler. Bill loved him, flaws and all, and he never publicly turned against him. That loyalty matched Barbara's, and together they carried Larry through his roughest years. Even Hayden Rohr, who played Dr. Bellows, stayed close. Barbara called him a prince. He was kind, open, and quietly gay at a time when that wasn't easy in Hollywood. He hosted parties for the cast, made everyone feel welcome, and kept the atmosphere light when things got tense. He worked with Hagman through all 5 seasons, and even returned for the reunion film years later. That says everything about how they truly got along. While I Dream of Jeannie was still on the air in the late 1960s, Larry Hagman was falling apart in ways the audience never saw. Years later, he admitted that during the show's run, he was sinking into such deep depression that he suffered what he called about a breakdown a month. That meant roughly 10 to 12 serious emotional collapses every single year while he was smiling on camera. At the same time, his drinking was getting worse. Co-star Barbara Eden and later accounts described him starting the workday with alcohol, then slowly escalating as the years passed. What began as coping turned into dependence. Decades later, that damage caught up to him, and by the mid-1990s, he needed a liver transplant after years of abuse. There was also a moment he described from that era when he quit several drugs at once, and his body simply gave out. On set with cameras waiting, he broke down in tears and physical reactions, feeling as if everything toxic inside him was forcing its way out all at once, even though everyone still expected him to perform. Barbara Eden felt all of this up close. In later interviews, including one she gave many years after the show ended, she spoke about the joy of working with Hagman and the strain that came with it. She remembered instant chemistry during their first screen test, the kind you cannot fake. But as the series grew heavier and his drinking deepened, she also saw his darker swings. He could be moody, difficult, hard to manage. Instead of fighting it, she learned to stay calm and professional. When he sulked or exploded, she focused on getting the scenes finished. Sometimes that meant fixing her own hair or costume quickly when production was running late rather than asking for extra attention. She cared about him, knew he was troubled, and quietly adapted to his instability so the show could keep moving. Over the years, fans filled in the gaps with more dramatic images. Stories spread about Hagman sobbing in his trailer over childhood wounds, about Eden holding and rocking him several times a week, about Hayden Rohr privately calling it unprofessional therapy. Those moments feel vivid and emotional, but they do not appear in verified biographies or archived interviews. What does appear again and again is the foundation beneath them. Hagman was unstable. He was addicted, and the set often revolved around managing his chaos, even if the most extreme versions came later through fan retellings. That chaos spilled into legend. Several retro TV channels and fan videos claimed that during the later seasons of Jeannie, Hagman became so furious over script changes that he urinated on part of the set in open defiance, usually described as the living room of Tony Nelson's house. The story is always placed in the late 1960s when the show was under pressure and Hagman was drinking heavily and experimenting with drugs. Hagman himself later admitted those years caused frightening flip-outs. No studio document confirms the exact day, the quoted lines, or how many people were present. Still, the story fits a pattern everyone agreed on. One day he could be charming, the next day he could explode. Things got so volatile that visitors were eventually banned from the soundstage after another incident involving an axe-terrified people. Some versions pushed the story even further, claiming a janitor spent exactly 2 hours cleaning the mess while NBC executives drafted firing papers, calling it a health code violation. That specific scene does not show up in call sheets or production memos. What is documented is that network executives were repeatedly alarmed by Hagman's behavior. Eden herself has said visitors were barred after the axe incident, and later reporting shows NBC seriously weighing whether his conduct could damage the show's family-friendly image. Writers and crew later recalled that cleaning up after Hagman, sometimes literally, sometimes emotionally, ate into already tight shooting days. Over time, many small disasters may have blended into one humiliating overnight nightmare in people's memories. Another dramatic image, often retold, shows Barbara Eden bursting into a late-night meeting, tearing up Hagman's termination papers and warning executives that firing him would destroy the show because their chemistry was everything. That exact confrontation has never been verified. What Eden has said again and again is that she felt protective of him. She knew he frightened the network. She also believed in what they created together. In reality, ratings were already slipping by the late seasons, and NBC canceled I Dream of Jeannie in 1970. Anyway, whatever arguments may have happened behind closed doors, the network ultimately cared more about schedules and numbers than emotional loyalty. Publicly, Bill Daly kept things light. Some fans say he joked away the urination story while privately telling friends the cast split into normals and chaos. That line does not appear in his confirmed interviews. In a 2010 interview, Daly instead spoke warmly about Hagman, crediting him with helping turn Roger Healy into the show's third lead. He remembered the fun of building a Bob Hope and Bing Crosby-style rhythm together. Still, many behind-the-scenes stories describe Daly using humor to calm tension and keep filming on track. It is easy to imagine him smiling in public while privately feeling worn down by the same storms everyone else endured. Hayden Rohr, who played Dr. Bellows, was often pulled into these stories, too. Some claim he skipped a table read in protest and demanded separate blocking after one meltdown. Verified accounts paint a very different man. Rohr was disciplined, punctual, and proud of being the grounded center of a fantastical show. In interviews from 1969, he spoke calmly about following scripts and accepting that he had no control over story chaos. Eden later praised him as the ultimate straight man who gave the magic weight. If Hagman spun out, Rohr's quiet rebellion seemed to be doing his job even better, not staging walkouts. As the personal strain grew, the creative pressure exploded. In late 1968 and 1969, Jeannie was coming off its strongest period. Season 4 ranked 26th in the Nielsen ratings with a 20.7 score. Then NBC programming chief Mort Werner told creator Sidney Sheldon there would be no 5th season unless Tony and Jeannie married. Sheldon argued it would ruin the Jeannie premise. Eden agreed. The tension had always lived in what could never fully happen. The network did not back down. From November 25, 1969, the cast was flown to Florida for 3 days to stage a mock wedding for hundreds of TV writers at the Patrick Air Force Base Officers Club. Florida Governor Claude Kirk even cut the cake. Days later, episode 124, The Wedding, aired in early December 1969. After Jeannie ended in 1970, Barbara Eden kept moving even when everything in her private life was trying to pull her ender. She bounced between guest roles, TV movies, and variety specials. And at the same time, she was raising her son. Then 1971 hit her hard with a traumatic miscarriage. And decades later, she also faced the death of her second son. Pain she has talked about in profiles as part of how she learned to keep going through all of it. She kept saying that family life was what kept her grounded even while the shadow of Jeannie followed her everywhere and people still pictured her in that pinker costume no matter what role she took. So as the years passed she started choosing more carefully. She said yes to the Jeannie TV films in 1985 and 1991, but she turned down other reunion ideas when they felt too gimmicky or too repetitive. That selectiveness mattered later because when Dallas finally came calling around 1990, she did not want a wink-wink crossover. She wanted a real part. She insisted on playing a brand new character, Lee and Dega, a powerful woman with revenge on her mind aimed straight at JR. And afterward, she said she loved getting to ruin Larry Hagman's character on screen instead of serving him. What made it feel even sharper is that Dallas had already turned Hagman into something bigger than a sitcom star. When the Who Shot Jr. cliffhanger turned the show into a global obsession in 1980. He used that frenzy to push for a new deal that paid roughly $100,000 per episode. For a while, that made him one of the highest-paid actors on television. And it also let him lean into J.R. Ewing like it was his uncensored dark side. But behind the scenes, the mask was never as clean as the camera frame. Hagman later admitted that during the original run, he was drinking as many as 5 bottles of champagne a day, a routine that matched JR's constant glass in hand until doctors later ordered him to quit after a liver transplant in 1995. People around him also remembered how he kept alcohol close in his dressing room and even on set. And then there was the earlier story that never fully went away. The notorious prank from the late 1960s when he spiked a coffee urn with LSD and colleagues ended up hallucinating until production shut down. Even years later, that kind of memory can make people smile in public and still stay guarded inside. That is why the chemistry between Eden and Hagman still feels like a strange combination of warmth and danger to some fans. Back in the mid-1960s, audiences watched them build that flirty electric connection on I Dream of Jeannie. Decades later, Eden told people their chemistry was immediate from day one because she believed whatever he did in a scene and he believed her right back. Yet, time does not erase everything. In one 1980s reunion special, fans later freeze-framed the footage and counted Hagman's hand sliding back to Eden's forearm again and again, 7 times in one short segment. She keeps smiling. She keeps her posture. Then she admits in an off-camera comment that old scars tingle the moment he touched her. It is a small line, but it lands like a door quietly closing. And still they kept finding each other again. When Eden appeared as Lee and Dega in 5 1990 episodes of Dallas, she said it was unnerving how fast they fell into the same rhythm, like something old got switched back on without asking permission. Not because it was romantic in a simple way, more because it was familiar in a way that can feel powerful and unsettling at the same time. It is the kind of connection where you do not need to rehearse the feeling. It just shows up. Bill Daly saw that up close. He played Roger Healy and he kept getting pulled back into the Jeannie orbit too, reprising his role in I Dream of Jeannie. 15 years later in 1985 and I Still Dream of Jeannie in 1991. Years later, he was still sitting beside Eden and Hagman at events like the 2010 Dragon Con 45th anniversary reunion. People around him said he always talked about how much fun it was to work with the two leads. And in other interviews, he is clearly happy when he describes their timing. That same rhythm that made even simple scenes feel like live jazz. So when in one later get-together he half-joked that Larry's eyes still seemed to scan any room for Barbara first. Fans heard something deeper under the joke. Like he was saying the bond never fully shut off. He was the one man who spent 5 seasons standing between G and her master, watching the connection up close, watching how it lingered even when the cameras stopped. By 2011, Eden finally decided to tell more of her own story. After years of resisting a full memoir, she released Jeannie Out of the Bottle, promoted as a look back at 5 decades in Hollywood. From studio chorus girl days to Jeannie and through the stillborn child, the addictions of a second husband and the accidental heroin-related death of her adult son. When she writes about the Jeannie years, she talks about intense highs with Hagman and ups and downs in their relationship, but sometimes she stops short. She hints that some breakdowns and private trailer moments are too personal to put fully on the page. Those gaps became fuel online. Fan communities started filling the silence with theories about unspeakable trailer secrets and unspoken sacrifices, as if the missing parts had to be dramatic to explain why she protected the story for so long. At the same time, coverage of the book emphasized how candid she was about the pain behind the pink harem pants, calling it a mix of nostalgic TV magic and raw confession that finally showed the real woman behind the smile. Then the timeline reached its final heavy turn. Larry Hagman died in Dallas on 23 November, 2012, aged 81, after years of serious health problems. Those included the liver transplant in 1995, liver cancer, an acorn-sized tumor removed from his tongue in 2011, and later a diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia. Eden later said they had spoken only weeks before his death. And she truly believed he would survive yet another round because he had already beaten the odds so many times. Their bond began back in 1965 when they started filming the 139 episodes of I Dream of Jeannie. And after he died, she posted a long public tribute about their unique connection. Still, the more dramatic deathbed claims people sometimes repeat, like nurse logs or daily pleas to see her or a bedside reconciliation, are details that show up mostly in modern video essays instead of documented records. Even the rest of the Jeannie family shows how uneven fame can be. Hayden Rohr, the proper Dr. Bellows, kept working after the series, and his final screen role was that 1985 reunion movie. He died in 1987, and later even admiring colleagues admitted he fell into that sad category of being remembered mostly by people who watched the show first run. Bill Daly found steady work on other sitcoms. Yet in the streaming era he and Rohr often became the other guys in fan memory. Meanwhile, casual viewers could still instantly name Barbara Eden's Jeannie and the guy from Dallas, Larry Hagman. And yet, Eden and Hagman kept intersecting through the years in ways the others did not. They reunited in the 1971 thriller, A Howling in the Woods, later in the 1985 Jeannie TV movie, and again in nostalgia specials that kept pulling the past into the present. Even in the 2020s, Eden was still sharing affectionate tributes and behind-the-scenes stories about him. So, the legacy ends up feeling simple and strange at once. A Jeannie and her master on screen. Two people who moved on in real life, and still somehow the same rhythm that could return in seconds. Like the bottle was never fully sealed.